A very good morning. You're still watching Morning at NTV. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. I'm Arnold Segawa. Let's get right into it. Time to talk elections. To be more precise, we've got news earlier on. I was going on with Rita about the Daily Monitor in our press review on the special interest groups nomination kicking off. And how about we delve into that particular conversation, talk about the elections, as of course, as we prepare for the 2021 general poll. Joining me for this particular conversation, to my left, I do have Wilberforce Seriazi, who is a spokesperson for the Alliance Party, and to my extreme left, we do have the spokesperson for the Electoral Commission, Paul Bukenya. Gentlemen, thanks for making time to speak to us. And thank you for having your masks on.
Oh, thank you.
Let me start with you, Paul. Busy season. I mean, where do we start? We're seeing so many crossovers from one party to another. Is there any particular guidance or any boxes one needs to fill when it comes to the EAC if there's some crossing happening at any particular point? Or is it just party business?
Well, that's largely party business. Political parties are always recruiting members, and it's part of what they do to achieve their objectives. As political parties and organizations, it doesn't really come into the Electoral Commission. Of course, there are some legal provisions for elected members of parliament who may want to cross from one political party to another in parliament and all that. But for us as the Electoral Commission, at this moment, at this stage in the electoral cycle, we know that there is a very intense political activity. There are party primaries, and there is parties are active on the ground, trying to establish their footprint and across the country. And the way they recruit and who joins which party, provided they do it according to the laws, we are not involved in that. We will, of course, interact with the politicians or the actors now when they come for nominations before us and they say, I'm going to be nominated under this party flag and I've been endorsed, and these are the documents from the Secretary General of the registered political party. At this moment, it is internal political party business.
Well, before, let me bring you in. Definitely the Alliance Party is fronting some people here and there. Yeah. Just give me a sense of what this presents. I don't want to call it a ruckus at some point, but if you're seeing this party, someone is crossing, then it's like a music launch. There's people screaming at this particular time where we have to wear masks. We have to keep ourselves. How big of a role do people like you, who are at the helm of these political parties, how big of a role do you have to play, and are you even playing it?
Okay. First of all, thank you, Arnold, for inviting me in this talk showing this morning. But my own opinion is that what is happening by MPs and members from different parties crossing to different parties, to me, I think it's a good sign. I think that society politically is developing. I think that people are becoming more emboldened to exercise their freedom of association, which is good. And also, I think that it is a realization now that political parties are not prisons. Political parties are entities where we share interests. And therefore, it is extremely, really fair and legal for a person to go where they feel that they can play their politics, they can make a contribution politically in any organization. So we're about to see the old political culture where people call others moles, where people think that to leave a political party, then you have been bought by another political party. And basically, we're about to see end of blackmail in politics. It is becoming extremely fair, natural, and okay for people to associate with whoever they wish to associate with. So for us in NT, we think that's very good. We think people should have the right and freedom to go wherever they want to. But also it should be a reminder of the old political parties and all of us, the new political parties, how we do politics internally. And that's why as ANT we emphasize that we want to have a value-based organization, an organization where there are values of tolerance, listening to divergent views, putting a mechanism of resolving conflicts and all these kind of things. because it appears many people are running away from political parties because of the internal squabbles, because probably these parties are failing to manage the differences. So when we stand every day and tell the public that it is important to have a value-based organization, it is important to go into an organization which has whose intentions are not short but are long-term. Because if you have short-term intentions and then you don't succeed, most likely you stop operating in the political organizations. Therefore, for us in ANT, we want values inside the party. We respect each other, the language used, but most importantly, what we stand for as a party. So we need people to join ANT or the other parties for what those political parties stand for, not necessarily what they stand against. Because you have, you could join an organization whose main aim is to remove President Museveni, but we have 5 months. So what happens after the 5 months?
Right.
You remove or you fail?
Wilberforce, just to cut you short there, I just want to bring in Paul here.
Yeah.
Do you get the sense that the whole crossing on the eve of elections, maybe you might not be wearing the spokesperson hat for this particular one, for the EC, do you get the sense that this is maybe a preamble to having less independents standing for the 2021 poll as opposed to what it was before? If we're seeing more maybe mergers coming together and not mergers per se, but coalitions coming together, is this the beginning of less independents coming to the poll?
I think we as the Electoral Commission, we cannot speculate on how political actors are going to eventually work out. Our job is to facilitate their nomination lawfully and their participation lawfully, for that matter, because independents are still provided for in the laws. So when we come to the nomination, eventually how there's been consensus within parties, it's very important to us as the Electoral Commission, because it means that there will be less, conflicting, situations. There will be more consensus, and then it reduces on the petitions and other things that happen in the electoral process.
Yeah.
But we cannot speculate. Of course, our best, our wish, our desire, and our goal is to ensure that multi-party politics matures and the actors conduct themselves, responsibly and maturely, and I'm using that in context because, they are mature, they are grown-ups, and they are intelligent people. But I'm using it in that context. I hope you get it.
I see where you're coming from. Wilbur, you could just touch on that. But before that, I love the statement that you made. We see that multi-party politics actually matures.
Yeah.
But just less than a fortnight ago, a certain Simba wanted to actually hand in forms to run for the top job, and he was reportedly locked out. Well, his papers would not be taken. Wilberforce, this is on one end a preamble to maturity in multi-party politics, but we are seeing some very orthodox means of blocking out some participants. What do you say to this paradoxical conundrum we're in?
I think there are two issues here. One is the nature of politics that we have in Uganda and largely Africa. And this politics were the politics of individuals, where you find an organization, political organization, rallies or runs because of the charisma and the strength and the popularity of an individual. And in ANT we are struggling very much to do away with that kind of politics. We want politics that runs because of the strength of the political organization and its supporters. So what happened, I think, in NRM is that they're trying to do whatever is possible that nobody challenge a particular person.
But was it General Motu unopposed too?
Unopposed is different. Unopposed is different from locking out those who intend to.
Someone else pick forms?
No. In ANT we announced the roadmap. We requested, we even put in the advert, whoever wants to come and stand for party ticket, and no one came up. That's different. But when one tries to come up and is blocked, that is what is wrong. So I think that's just an effect of the kind of politics we have, where positions are preserved for different people, and I think that's wrong. So when we talk about the independents In my view, independents come because, one, they do not appreciate the available political parties. They don't believe in them, but they also want to further their political agenda. So they come as independents. What is happening now, I think, is giving people options. You have different political parties coming in. You have NUP, you have ANT. So most likely, many people will get an option where they go. If you are not comfortable with ANT, probably FDC will attract you, or DP, or NOP. So most likely than not, we are going to see fewer independents.
Right.
But the important thing, in as far as ANT is concerned, that for there to be change in a country, that for you to change and transform a country, you can only do that through an organization, a collection of individuals with the same ideas that can be able to transform a nation. We believe that no single individual has got the capacity to change or to transform a nation. It can only be an organized group of people who believe in the same ideology, values, and intentions that can organize and transform a country. Therefore, we've been telling people that political parties are quite important in as far as we are concerned. Because you see, if you have a pressure group may be for just one purpose, an election. You know, just going to an election, winning an election. But as far as we are concerned, and as ANT, winning an election is much easier than actually managing power. So it is important for organizations, as they try to wrestle power, but to organize themselves so that they get the capacity, once they're in power, to manage a nation. There are so many things involved in there.
Right.
So what the Honorable Kyagulanyi did to shift from people power, a pressure group, into a political organization, I think is very good for the country. It is very good for him. Now, you know, he's a very good mobilizer, he has a lot of support. Now he needs to get to organize what he has mobilized. Because if you're just a mobilizer, you're more or less like, you know, going for a musical show. People come and just be happy, enjoy merrymaking. Now it's time for him to organize them into structures, into and therefore in the coming days we expect to see what ANT stands, what NUP stands for. So we expect that now the Honorable Kyagulanyi will be the one to use his popularity, his charisma to market the organization, rather than the organization to market the individual. So that it gets a national appeal, it gets structures all over. And indeed, for us in NT, we believe that it will even be easier. It is always easier to associate, have a coalition, a corporation with an entity, a legal entity.
Right.
So it's a welcome.
Let me bring you in, Paul, here. A question that I'm sure you've been asked countless times is on the independence of the Electoral Commission, if at all the person at the helm of the Electoral Commission is an appointee of the incumbent. How do you justify that leading into an election where just yesterday we had someone from the NUP who argued, the spokesperson, who argued that election irregularities are a process and it's not an event. So leading up to the vote, if there are irregularities, then that does not make for a free and fair election. So his argument is this is a process, it's not something that happens on the election day. And I'm sure you subscribe to that particular school of thought. But my question is, if the person at the helm of the Electoral Commission is an appointee of the incumbent, what does that mean for the independence of the Electoral Commission?
Yeah, thank you, Arnold. First, I think there is no irregularity with the chairperson of the Electoral Commission being nominated by the president and then approved by Parliament, because that's the provision of the law, just like with other heads of agencies and departments of government and you know, institutions. So that one, there is no irregularity with it. I would not take that line. It's in accordance with the laws of Uganda, the Constitution, the Electoral Commission Act, and just like, you know, like I've said, the other ministries, departments, and agencies of government. And when the commission is executing its work, its roles, it certainly follows the Electoral Commission Act and the laws, electoral laws provided for. So that's the guide to ensure that we act and achieve a fair and credible process and act independently of the players around or the environment. So we will do that, and where we have to be, taken on any aspect of the electoral process, we've been taken on that merit, on that ground. But not it's wrong to generalize that we cannot be independent because the head of the institution, the commission, 7 members of the commission are nominated by the president and approved by parliament, where everyone is represented, where even the political party now has representation. So that could be misleading and could be painting a picture that probably, it's misleading generally. That's how I'll take it. So I think in exercise of our duty, the Electoral Commission pursues the independence in as far as the law provides for independence. Our relationship with other agencies has been questioned, but we don't work in isolation. We work with other agencies. We work with political parties, for example. We work with, we have 26 registered political parties, and we work with them through a national consultative forum. When we work with political parties to find a solution, like we've been consulting on managing campaigns during COVID, does that take our independence? It doesn't. It means we are working with them and we are taking responsibility, issuing the final decisions, but after a consultative process. So there are legal provisions for us on how we can relate with other agencies of government, including the legislature, which is parliament, the executive, which is cabinet. We don't sit in cabinet. We have a Minister of Justice who represents constitutional commissions. So how do we relate with those and maintain our independence? The law provides for that.
I definitely hear you. Maybe the other question would be around financing. Now, as per the provisions of the Commission, the party statements should actually be made available to you, and I am led to believe that if I were to walk up to you and ask very, very cordially for the revenue stream of, let's say, ANT or NUP, you would provide these to the public. But
sure.
As per yesterday, yet again, some members who are running for political office making it clear that the NRM is not particularly availing some of these. I don't know if you can substantiate some of these claims.
I do not subscribe to that. Of course, the Electoral Commission is also the secretariat of the political parties, because we have a secretariat for the National Consultative Forum. We also have the files of political parties, and they make returns. They do their reports, minutes of their meetings, delegates conferences, and all of that. Each political party has a file. I would like to probably say that there is a procedure for access to information. How do you, when you want to access information about an organization, an agency, a procedure that you have to follow. You don't just walk in and say, I would like to do this. And many people have come in and we've guided them, right, in this manner, present this, because access to information is even in the Constitution. And each agency has a focal person who is the custodian of such information. In this case, the Secretary Electoral Commission.
How would I get ANT's returns? If I want to walk in and ask you for ANT's returns.
You follow the procedure, and then we will certainly furnish you with information. The media has come for such documents.
What is the procedure?
Of course, the procedure is to write officially. There is a I have not carried everything, but when you approach the Electoral Commission, I would like to look at such and such information. Obtain such and such information for such and such a purpose. I am so and so. You identify yourself, your address, and then you can be provided with the information you need. We have a resource center. We have records that are actually public documents, but there is a manner in which there are, there are procedures in which you can access that information.
Right. Let me bring it back to you, Wilberforce. The issue of party financing is arguably the elephant in the room, because it's, in a way, creates a playing field that is in a bit uneven, especially for parties like yourselves who are just coming into the fray. How are you sorting out your finances as it stands right now? Where do you start? How are you doing this?
Okay, thank you. You probably know that politics is probably the most expensive business. Running a political organization and campaigns and all these things is quite expensive. So as a new political party, definitely we have challenges in that area. but we are also confident that because of the goodwill that we are receiving from the population, it's actually our supporters that have basically been funding all the activities. We have so many people who would send 1,000 shillings or 10,000 or 50. So we have been basically been running our activities from fundraising from supporters and well-wishers, and I think they're doing very well. You know that we are not yet. We just recently got 2 members of parliament, but before that we were not members. We are not in parliament. So even the government funds that come through the Electoral Commission are supposed to fund political parties that have membership in parliament, and it depends on the number of members of parliament that you have. Even if they decided to fund us now, we only have 2 members of parliament. I don't know how that would, what that will come to. So basically, we are managing because of our membership and friends and well-wishers, and we are managing well.
Thank you for that, Wilberforce.
Yeah.
Paul, let me come back to you. In today's Daily Monitor, there's a very, it's a full page actually, just talking about special interest groups. The nominations have kicked off. You do actually touch on some of these issues. It's quite shocking that Kampala, capital city, registered only one of the lowest rates when it came to a turn-up for the nominations. I don't know what informs this. Are people just oblivious? I mean, Kampala boasts of what, over 3 million people, if I'm not mistaken. Why such a low turnout? One thing, and yes, maybe when you're done with that, we could touch on the issue with the 12 NRM staff test. Well, the 12 that are quarantined, the 2 who have tested positive for COVID-19. Remember, this was at Chadondo. Did the commission do enough to make sure that the SOPs are being adhered to? And if so, why did it take so? Maybe that's not a question that you could answer. That's really a party question. But the commission's role on that and the Kampala issue.
Yeah, thanks, Arnold. Yesterday we started the nomination exercise across the country, and we've gotten the reports of the turn-up. Of course, varying, the areas are varying. There are good turn-up on day one in different districts across the country, and then of course you've looked at Kampala, which probably sent in a low turn-up on day one, which is something that normally happens. For an exercise that is stretching 5 days, it's normally a practice. People say, let me go on the last day, or I'll go on another day. But also, I would probably want to ask Wilberforce, has he sent in his team? Because they're aspiring candidates, because we mobilize political parties to participate in this exercise. So I wouldn't be so much worried. We're looking at several factors on day one. Have we opened our stations? Did we deliver all the materials that are supposed to be there? Are our staff there at the stations? Do people know about these places? Can they access them? And so when we tick off all that, then you wait for the aspiring candidates to come in. We think that we will pick up as we progress in the exercise, which is normally what happens with such exercises. We will continue with mobilization, of course. We issued standard operating procedures relating to the conduct of this exercise to ensure that an aspiring candidate only comes with a nominator and a seconder, so 3 people at the maximum, which is helping us, and the reports from the field are positive about that. There's been compliance, and there's hand washing, there is wearing face masks.
But
so we think that those procedures are good enough.
There's also criticism of people actually walking such long distances to access the stations. And remember, these are special interest groups to start with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. There are some areas which have long distances. We've been told about that. Distances, and some of these are persons with disabilities, physical or visual impairment, or and we've got, of course, a challenge in that, but that's why the exercise is a long period, so that participants prepare for that, because this is the structure, and these are areas that are ordinarily accessed still by these people. Older persons still come to sub-counties, they still come for services at these centers. So for a political activity, if you plan well and work within your political party structures and coordinate well, you can bring your persons to the centers. And that's why we gave the exercise several number of days. Our objective is not to keep people away by distances, but also bringing the exercise down to each parish we cut our election budget because of issues. So these are things, some of the things that we have to come to terms with, that probably there will be a longer distance. You have to prepare early. The exercise starts at 9 and ends at 5. So you are still within time, even curfew time, to come to the venues and go back.
The issue of the two?
The quarantine, of course, it's a concern, and that's why some of our guidelines have been going through a rigorous consultative process to ensure safety of participants in the electoral process. It's unfortunate that happened, and we are following the story. But we, as Electoral Commission, have been working on detailed guidelines, including standard operating procedures during the nomination process. We have already indicated that we will not allow processions and groups coming to the nomination centers. It will be the aspiring candidate, the seconder, and then the person nominating them. That is done to reduce the risk of contracting the virus. And that's why probably we are discussing this whole issue of trying to achieve minimum contact during the electoral process, which has been also referred to as scientific. That's why we have that engagement to reduce, or rather to limit the number of people that can gather for political purposes. It is part of the, it explains why we are moving in that direction.
Wilberforce, I want to bring you in here, because if you're hearing what Paul is saying, obviously they're tough times, and I mean, you also get the sense that the Commission has to act drastically to arrest the situation, otherwise it will just blow up in our faces. But if you are in your position, you're a new party, and then the guidelines are this stringent, of course, to make sure that the pandemic doesn't go overboard. Doesn't that just where does that leave you as a new party?
Definitely, we had a meeting with the Electoral Commission a few days ago, maybe a few weeks ago. One of our requests up to date is that the Electoral Commission has got no capacity to analyze these health issues. And I imagine that they are also working from the guidance of the Ministry of Health. So we had requested the Electoral Commission to convene a meeting together with the political players and Ministry of Health, so that it helps us to clearly understand what and how they come to the decisions they make. And that therefore, once we understand as ANT clearly in our minds why Electoral Commission and the Ministry of Health come to these restrictions, then it can help us to be on the same page, so that we don't feel that we're being manipulated. Why? Because we've had this pandemic for how long now? 4 months?
Well, the lockdown over 4 months.
Even the pandemic is about,
Well, from November last year, China.
Last year. And despite, the weaknesses in our systems in Uganda, you realize that we haven't lost a person. We just started losing, a few weeks. Now. And we've not had people in critical condition. All of them that are being taken to these quarantine and hospitals are not in critical condition. Therefore, when they had a partial opening, we gave the example of Chikuba and downtown Kampala, where you have, I don't know, probably 1 million people every day coming in, going out. And the tests do not show that the pandemic, the virus is, the infection rate is going higher and higher. And so we want to sit with the Ministry of Health and clearly understand this. We don't want to have a feeling that the infections that are being talked about may be manipulation. May be a manipulation, so that the Electoral Commission or the government that may have may come up with more stringent restrictions as we go into the Electoral Commission. So I would stand here still, sit here and ask for an engagement with the Ministry of Health, with political organization, so that we clearly understand.
I like the way you've put it, Wilberforce. And Paul, I want to bring you back in. You have new political parties, relatively new, like ANT, and then you have a health minister who is caught on camera without, who's not adhering to the SOPs, and she uses, what is being said is the people got excited that she had come there, but we now know that she is vying for office. So basically, using the Electoral Commission as a scapegoat, or the vote, the poll, as a scapegoat to engage these people. Listening to what she had to say, and where you know she stands right now, that she is running for public office, what do you say to people like Wilberforce or parties like ANT and the NUP who argue that the playing ground is not even? You know, it's okay for some people to go out there and engage with their masks on the table and, you know, gather crowds, but it's not okay for, you know, opposition parties to do that. What do you say to that when we have a video showing otherwise?
And probably you've seen a few pictures where you have members, ministers, and MPs having gatherings.
But I cannot speak to those. There's two that we got yesterday, but we have not yet verified them. So I do not want to be, we don't want to be the spreaders of fake news, but we also have seen those. I don't want to name the names, but we have not yet verified them as NTV. The one that we know, she has spoken to it, she did acknowledge. So what do you say to that, Paul?
We, as Electoral Commission, we gave an indicator of how political campaigns should be conducted. Our comprehensive guidelines have not come out because we've not even officially started the campaigns. We do not have candidates as Electoral Commission. We are not in charge of political activities, and we do not organize party primaries. Or we're not even responsible when an aspiring conducts themselves, how they are conducting themselves. But of course, we put out a general indication of how, when we get to the campaigns, we should conduct ourselves in accordance with the existing conditions. So we stick to that, when we get into the political campaigns with nominated candidates, we will have to minimize, you know, gatherings. And we're coming out with comprehensive guidelines, like I told you. And according to our roadmap, that will be on the 6th of this month, of August. But concerning how people are out there conducting themselves, whether a minister or an ordinary person or people in Chikubo, we're all subject to the guidance and the measures put in place by the Minister of Health. And that's why all the persons, whether minister or mobilizer, they have been called to order by the relevant authorities. We voiced the same concern that we should conduct ourselves in a manner that does not spread or rather increase the risk of spread of COVID.
It's a quite interesting answer, and of course it gives you a gap between now and when the campaigns,
we're studying those patterns because we know that there will be excitement during campaigns. How do we enforce regulations? For example, that's why probably it has taken us time to really do the comprehensive guidelines, because we consulted widely. He knows that. We said, how do we regulate public meetings? There will be a lot of excitement if people move in processions. A politician wants to gather crowds, and the more people you have on your, you know, following you, the stronger you appear. We know that. That's the heat of the campaign, the excitement that comes with it. So the Kadodi, you know, movement, you know. So we're learning from those, and we are looking at how to close up on those gaps. But of course, working with the stakeholders. But as it is now, we're all subject to those rules and the measures put in place. And that's why, up to the highest level, all those persons involved have been called to order.
Gentlemen, the final question I want to ask you is, of course, this is going to be called, we're hearing it's a scientific campaign, and the media is going to be very big on this, and of course, social media campaigns. And I want to ask the two of you what your thoughts are. I want to start with you, Wilberforce, on the matter around if we are conducting the campaign per se on broadcast and TV and radios and just media generally, what would be a best case scenario in terms of a regulator of sorts or an oversight body like Electoral Commission for you, Wilberforce, to make sure that there's a level ground? And how can they achieve this for an ANT person to get as much airtime as someone else for another party?
Definitely, when the roadmap came out from the Electoral Commission, we did write to the Electoral Commission. But in that letter, we also gave proposals. Because as ANT, we are responsible enough, and we do not want to any Ugandan to die because of this pandemic. Therefore, we gave proposals, because we think that an election is very important too, but even lives are very important, because an election is basically bedrock of stability of a country, and the Electoral Commission should make sure that we balance between protection of life but also having a credible election. And we gave our proposals. And one of them, because one of the challenges of a digital platform is that, first of all, they are not widely spread to accommodate all the candidates. Because we're not talking about presidential candidates. We're going to have, I don't know, about 400 MPs, chairpersons of LCs, council, and so on and so forth. You do not expect all of them to be accommodated on the radios and TV and all this. So in a way that disenfranchises them and their supporters. You also the expense, because most of the radio stations are private. You know, if it was a state, if there were state media, you'd probably give time. So the issue you're asking, how is the Electoral Commission going to make sure that we get fair time? I don't know how we're going to do that, because they're not in charge of the private radio stations. Probably, if government was serious with this, could put a minimum rates for all candidates. But we had a meeting with the
minimum or maximum rates above which they can't charge.
I think actually maximum. Have a maximum rate above which, you know, these media agents should not be able, so that it makes it fair for almost everyone. But we had a meeting yesterday with the National Association of Broadcasters, and these are the issues we're discussing. And I think they're going to play a very important role in as far as helping the political player have access. And we raise these issues to them. I think there need to be first maximum rate for all of us, and the fair distribution of time, in terms of time, and also period and time. Because you know that in the country there are people who listen to these radios at different times. You know, they can give you time at 5 or 6 or when people are asleep. So I think the Association of National what is it?
Association of Broadcasters, NAB.
NB will have to play a very pivotal role in as far as enabling us access these platforms. But we ask the Electoral Commission that as candidates we should be also allowed to meet our supporters in controlled environments where we can be able to adhere to the SOPs. So I think we're waiting for the last roadmap, the final roadmap that the Electoral Commission will give us.
But you had also mentioned, just very, very briefly before Paul wraps it up, I mean, you're hardly getting that much money, well, should I say, fundraising from your people. I mean, you're a new party. So how would you be financing that?
No, I said that we are getting finances from members and supporters, and I said that we are managing well.
Okay, you're good. Okay. Paul, the issue of level playing field on this particular issue come the media space when the roadmap actually kicks off.
Of course, under you know, the guidelines that we've been working on, and they are, because the last consultation was with Minister of Health, and that means we're coming out next week. The consultations have included how to use media as a platform, and we're looking at it broadly. There is you know, methods that have been used over time, like posters, flyers, messages,
billboards,
you know, the billboards and banners in trading centers and things like that. But when it comes to radio, television, and social media, we've had very engaging meetings, you know, with the Uganda Communications Commission. How are we going to be able to use these media platforms? Media Council, how do we work out on conduct and achieve fairness and professional reporting and, you know, hosting people on the station. National Association of Broadcasters to work on harmonizing schedules, coming up with fair rates and general conduct and access. We've engaged with UBC on the same. The issue is that after nomination, we'll be harmonizing campaigns. That's required in our electoral laws. After which we will draw schedules on how members or persons who are nominated can access media. And we think that we'll achieve this because we've engaged the parties involved. And media is also looking at it, of course, as a challenge, because now it's a challenge to the media to live up to their call to serve the nation, you know, by providing a platform to drive the the campaigns as media. So we are also going to do media training as Electoral Commission. There are guidelines for media conduct, a whole range of measures to achieve a fair campaign period. But also there are methods that have not been rolled out, one-on-one, kakuyege. We've discussed with UCC, can we use Vizindalo, the community radios, the public address systems in our localities. And there are categories that do not actually do full-blown campaigns, that normally do one-on-one. Councillors, you have two parishes, and you have 3 months to campaign in them. But you know that there are categories that require such engagement through media. There is a procedure that we are following, and
True.
I think our discussions have been good.
I like that. I like that. I just finally, I just want you to allude to the, just touch on the fact of, in the past, opposition candidates have come out and say, they've gone to state broadcasters, and the issues were not actually, they were not given airtime per se. Maybe you could just touch on that. In your consultations,
we brought it out. We brought it out openly and say these matters have even gone to court. They've even been court rulings. And now in the case of the national broadcaster, there is even provision in the law that has been amended to ensure that there is compliance with, accessing candidates, presidential candidates, accessing the national broadcaster. But the private broadcasters are also regulated. The public, the airwaves are a public good. So we've engaged on that and say that we should provide that. That's why we've discussed schedules. Politicians will not be able to use this to also blackmail media houses. You just come and say, I want a 3-hour talk show and all that. So there is a lot of discussion that has been going on so that there is a fairness on either parts. We are not going to switch off regular programming for a full day for campaigns. We want to know how many slots do you have? What times do you have? Campaigns also have a time. They are from morning up to 6. So how much can we go into the night? And how can we do this without disrupting the normal business of the media? So we've gone into all those issues and we've come to some good understanding, which will be published in our guidelines.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. That's where we leave it for this particular election watch. To my extreme left, Mr. Paul Bukenya, who's a spokesperson for the Electoral Commission, and to my immediate left, we did have Mr. Wilberforce Serias, who was the spokesperson for the Alliance Party. We're going to take a short break. Morning at NTV continues after this.